in terms of going through 3 trillion transactions and looking for some sort of pattern or a way to find telltale signs that this transaction could be fraudulent, I think is going to be less successful than just doing the basics.
Welcome to our first edition of PayShield's Executive Series, and I'm here with Bruce, our founder, and we're here to explore what's shaping the payments in the fraud space right now. Today, we'll be diving into fraud deflection, why it's emerging as a priority, and what it means for the industry in 2025 and beyond. Bruce, we'll start with what's changing in the landscape at the moment. So let's start with what's shifting. What are you hearing at the moment? Why are we hearing more about fraud deflection right now?
I suppose it's being led by Visa and their work that they've been doing over the last 6 months to sort of try and make some of the tools that they've introduced into the market more effective in helping acquirers reduce the level of fraud that they have on many of the different types of MIDs that they have per products. So we're seeing a change in how they're going to do the scoring. We're seeing a change in whether or not the certain product classifications and fraud classifications are going to count. But more importantly, we're also seeing a bit of a rebellion from a lot of large and not so large merchants against this change in the calculation, purely because Visa hasn't been able to demonstrate to everybody just do they have an accurate tool for measuring the sorts of fraud. And I see there's two problems for that. One, the card issuers who instigate the fraud notifications are very lazy when it comes to putting the correct code for the type of dispute, and which means that anybody can ring up and say, I don't remember I didn't do this charge, and so they immediately put it down as fraud, right? They don't push back and get more information.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that we're seeing is that just the internal systems, and particularly a lot of large card issuers, aren't very good. And we're seeing duplicates, we're seeing all sorts of errors. We're seeing instances where items have been refunded, but yet chargebacks are still being issued. So there's lots of questions about if there is going to be a system, we want to make sure everyone wants to see an accurate and a workable system.
Yeah. And I guess that's from a merchant's perspective. Now looking towards the acquirer's perspective in terms of fraud deflection.
Well, that's good. I'm getting asked all the time, is there a magic bullet from an acquirer's point of view to identify transaction laundering? And the other issue, of course, is things that's becoming very popular at the moment is ghost sites. There's always been an attitude from the authorities that they want to protect the consumer. So anything that is being done, particularly on e-commerce sales, that's ripping the consumer off is something they want to stamp out. So there's another thing that we call, funny deliveries. That's when you order a toy truck, and you get a soft elephant. It's just that so the products aren't what you thought you were getting. So you thought you were buying something of $50 value, and you end up with something of $1 value. So that's the sort of merchant fraud that the acquirer is interested in stamping out.
Yeah. Okay. And I guess back to the merchant perspective, then why this rebellion is occurring is essentially there's a feeling that all the protections on the consumer rather than the merchant, and the merchant has nothing in place to really be able to fight a chargeback.
That's true. There was one stage there that they were talking about no fault chargebacks or no fault complaints, really, that they were taking the attitude that the consumer was always right and that it was the merchant at fault. They did introduce a thing called compelling evidence, which particularly with subscription billing systems, they put some rules in place when if you've had a couple of charges to the same merchant and, for essentially a similar product, you just can't charge it back without proper evidence and proper documentation to prove that there was an issue, which was a good thing for the merchant, but it's really not a widely used response, that's for sure.
Yeah. Okay. And I guess with this entire landscape, it's the sort of issue that's going on at the moment. Do you see any specific industries that are worse off at the moment or will be worse off?
Yeah, good question. What industries is it affecting most? Well, it's definitely affecting maybe people in the subscription industry, people who
Mm,
are selling Nutra type products, who are selling and who've set their business up on a model that relies on the consumer coming back or the
mm,
consumer just receiving products at a certain period of time. We've all been there where we've forgotten about something we subscribe to, and it's
mm.
been 3 years later we realize that, particularly in a business sense where you're not
Yeah.
personally making the expense yourself, where someone else is signing up
Yeah.
for something.
Yeah. No, that is that's a really good point. I guess moving on now, sort of talking about chargeback alerts. That's something that a lot of merchants rely on. They can be quite an operational burden outside of RDR. And I guess with what PayShield's doing with dispute intelligence, I guess if you can talk a bit on that, how dispute intelligence can help merchants.
Yeah, no, definitely will. So we developed dispute intelligence as an adjunct product to RDR. The reason for this is that it only applied to Visa cards, and we felt that it was a really worthwhile system. And so we can apply that to our Mastercard and other Ethica alerts in just
Yeah.
the same way.
Yeah.
One of the things that I've always felt why we got into this business and why we thought it was a
Mm,
sound business is that no one really wants a chargeback. It's expensive for the
no.
issuer, it's expensive for the acquirer, it's expensive for the merchant, right?
Mm,
Whereas the alerts aren't that expensive. They can generate a refund, and in the end of the day, everybody's happy, right? The card holder,
yeah.
except for the merchant, maybe not, but
Yeah.
but it still gives the merchant a chance to at least even make contact with the customer and try and resolve the dispute. But if they can't, then there is an easy way to deal with it.
Yeah. Okay, well, I guess with the sort of uncertainty, your approach of continuous chargeback alerts, if we do see them become less effective and people are now wanting to look more towards deflection of those chargebacks ever happening or being submitted in the first place, what do those sort of solutions look like? And what are some of the popular ways we're seeing businesses potentially adopt some sort of deflection strategies?
Yeah, sure. We taking this from the merchant point of view, we see there's two types of fraud. There's
Mm,
friendly fraud, and then
yeah.
there's non-friendly fraud, for want of a better word, right?
Yeah.
Non-friendly fraud is cards that are stolen or people with malicious intent, right? But it's there's the thing that we should all be focusing on is how to reduce friendly fraud as much as we can. I mean, the schemes can believe that up to 70% of fraud can be
Mm,
friendly fraud, which is a massive, massive number, right? So what are the schemes doing? Well, they have a couple of products. They have a product called Order Insights and another product from MasterCard called Consumer Clarity. They call them digital receipts, but it's essentially making the cart item detail
yeah.
available to the issuer to
Yeah.
show the cardholder what it is that they purchased. I mean, there's something like 140 fields or something of information that we can put
Mm,
in the details, but what
yeah.
it's all about is reminding the cardholder about it. So how do you do that? Sure, they can go log in their bank, but
Mm,
it's a technology transition that we have to
mm,
wait for before all the issuers are on board with this thing. And at the
yeah.
moment, it's going very slowly, right? It's only being really taken up at the enterprise level, and we've seen some really significant results from companies like Microsoft who are seeing a much bigger reduction in people not understanding what it is they pay for. I tell you what would be
Yeah.
even easier is if
Mm,
Microsoft put much more detail on the invoices that they do generate, so people
yeah.
know what it is that they're actually paying for. But
Yeah.
apart from that, that's one thing I would do is definitely every time you do a bill every month, send out an email with, what it is that they've just had their card
Yeah.
charged with.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so few people even do this, right? Then the other
Mm,
area I think you can do it is help the merchant buy the ad fee or the Google search term for their descriptors and
mm,
the types of
yeah.
products that they sell, so that when
Mm,
people see a strange item on their card statement, they can go
mm,
to Google or one of the other search engines and look it up and go to the help desk and find the
yeah,
transaction. So two
yeah,
things
yeah.
there the merchant needs to do is one, they need to add some software, which we
Mm,
coincidentally can help provide to them, to look up transactions based on parts of the card number and
mm,
maybe some other information so they can actually
yeah,
see what it was that they purchased. So that's a
yeah.
couple of things that they can do.
Okay. Do you think from a, obviously, because merchants are the ones that feel the brunt of this, do you think there needs to be more buy-in from either whether it's PayFacs, payment service providers, or acquirers helping these merchants out and providing them with these solutions instead of the merchant having to go out on their own and say, hey, I need to fix this myself.
I was only talking to somebody about this sort of issue only the other
Mm,
day. And the problem
yeah.
is if you're a really large bank like Citibank or Wells Fargo,
Mm,
they take the attitude that it's an honor for them to give you the merchant account.
mm,
Not the merchant should be, and the merchant should be thankful.
yeah.
And it's the merchant that should do the right thing and make
Yeah.
sure that they're respecting the fact that they've been
Yeah.
privileged enough to get an account.
Yeah.
Whereas perhaps some of the smaller acquirers and perhaps some PayFacs,
Mm,
they've got much more of a vested interest to see that the merchant does the right thing. But,
okay.
you know, Citibank take the attitude there's always a couple of
Yeah.
100,000 people out there that want merchant
Yeah.
accounts that are
Yeah.
waiting in
Yeah.
the backlogs. They're
Yeah.
not as much of a vested interest, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. No, that's good. I think now moving to the other side of friendly fraud for then people that are experiencing fraud, so people who are submitting stolen credit cards, I guess, what are some of the solutions that people can be using at a pre-transaction level to be able to ensure that those transactions are being stopped so that one, the stolen credit cards aren't being used, and then secondly, they aren't then trying to double dip and do a chargeback as well, so they can try and get the money back as well.
I think, I mean, everyone should use 3DS, right? So whether it's frictionless or non-frictionless,
Yeah,
it should definitely be a part of every e-commerce website.
yeah,
Then on top of it, then once if the 3DS has passed or failed, then you can then go on and do some more stuff. We have tools that we provide that do some basic analytics to help you identify if the person that you're thinking that you're selling a product to is a person who does live at the address that they've provided and
yeah,
perhaps that they do have some relationship to the card that they're presenting. But it does happen all the time. I mean, I make purchases with my wife's card, right? And I'm
mm,
sure she makes purchases with my card, right? So, I mean, in the truest sense of friendly fraud, I could say if my wife used my card
yeah,
that I didn't authorize the charge, right?
yeah.
And that's a real problem, right?
For sure. I think maybe if we want to touch more, so the transaction risk tool API that we use, that's the product you're alluding to.
Yeah.
I guess why would people want to jump on board with that, along with 3D Secure?
I think it all goes about providing as much information as you can. You can never have enough information,
Yeah, for sure.
pre-information. And when you're a shopkeeper and someone walks into the shop, you can see the person in front of you.
Mm,
But even still, I've never been asked to show my driver's license or any sort of form of ID for a
yeah.
product under $1,000.
Mm,
Maybe if I was buying a car or something, I'd be asked for ID. So
yeah.
it's amazing, right? We know e-commerce in the e-commerce world, we know so much more about who's buying from us, and we can
Yeah.
collect so much more information about them than
Yeah.
and we're sharing that data with other information providers. It's interesting
Mm,
that there's an executive order left over from the Biden administration that
yeah.
limits access to US data by
Yeah.
various
Okay.
foreign countries, but we still do collect that data and we still are able to build a pretty good profile of who's purchasing.
Yeah. Yeah. So I guess from an operational perspective,
Yeah.
businesses handling fraud and chargebacks, whether that's a merchant, an acquirer, or a payment service provider, how are these, I guess, fraud deflection solutions going to affect them internally or from an operational perspective?
Well, what I think you find most people that go into business, right? So they set
Mm.
up and they've got good people for sales and marketing. They have
Yeah.
people with help with a product and product shipping,
Mm.
and they might have someone who's in IT who's done the payments integration and whatever. And they may have somebody even sitting there helping with support, but most of the support's not payment support. It's support around when's my product going to be delivered and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But the thing that we find with most of our customers is that they have never set up a dispute management or a fraud risk management, or even have anybody with the knowledge necessary to know what to
Mm.
do or how to see it or how to find it.
Yeah.
And we end up offering to fill that gap. And I think that's a service that it's very affordable, and it certainly is a way to help merchants grow their business with the confidence that they've got someone looking over their shoulder.
For sure. I guess to wrap things up, I'd like to look ahead to the future a little bit. Based on, I guess, everything we've spoken about, where do you see this entire industry, I guess, heading over the next 6 to 12 months, and what sort of kinds of shifts or trends should businesses be preparing for?
Yeah, well, there's certainly what we're seeing, as you introduced in the very first few minutes of this call, is that
Mm.
there's certainly a lot of impetus from the acquirers and from the schemes about
Mm.
what they can do to reduce the fraud. I mean, post-COVID, the
Mm.
number of online transactions has skyrocketed and continues
Yeah.
to increase. It's introduced a whole lot of new people into the e-commerce world. Maybe some of the card holders or some of the consumers aren't as smart as they should be, and they make honest mistakes. But wherever there's opportunity, there's
Yeah.
always people who want to take advantage of it. So I think the
Yeah.
schemes are really sort of looking at the numbers and thinking, hey, there's too much of it, and we're not seeing it fixed up as much as possible. I think there is definitely a balance between, I mean, don't forget, a scheme or an acquiring bank looks at the travel industry, and they
Mm.
regard it as a high risk industry, right? And there's lots of
Yeah.
reasons why, right? But it's a perfectly acceptable industry, right? It's not like you're selling
Yes.
a CBD
Yeah.
or gaming or whatever, right? It's a
Yeah. Yeah.
and yet that's an industry that has some really significant problems with chargebacks, right? And yet it
Yeah.
could be so easily fixed. It's
For sure. And I guess the conversation on everyone's mind at the moment is AI and what we're sort of seeing there from both a pre-transaction fraud detection level or a post-transaction chargeback deflection or resolving. I guess from the our side, I guess how can we positively leverage AI to whether it's improving processes or automating processes to detect fraud, deflect chargebacks.
working with PayFax. We've been developing tools for spidering various websites, and we're using AI to look for phrases and for pictures
Mhm.
and discussions that may indicate that a website's not selling or inadvertently selling something that
Yeah,
they didn't think that they were doing. And I think
yeah,
in terms of going through 3 trillion transactions and looking for some sort of pattern or a way to find telltale signs that this transaction could be fraudulent, I think is going to be less successful than just doing the basics, confirming the sale, making sure that you've got device ID information and
yeah, yeah.
you've done 3DS and essentially you know who you're dealing with.
Cool. I think that's on my set. And I think lastly, just on a personal note, is there sort of one topic or product that you're keeping a close eye on at the moment um, that sort of piqued your interest?
I think the thing that I think I'm particularly interested in is doing more analytics for people and providing that information as it's needed instead of doing
Yes.
like a weekly report. Give the ability to report to somebody, and it might be things like all of a sudden if someone has a history of only doing 2 transactions a day, and all of a sudden it's 100, I would, as soon as the transactions got to 10, I would wanting to have our team know that that's happening, and I'd certainly want to let the
Yeah.
merchant know that that's happening.
Yeah, for sure. Great. Well, I think thanks for your insights, Bruce. They were really good. But that's a wrap on episode 1.
Thanks, Will.